My name is Sloane Brennan, and I'm 34 years old. 4 weeks ago, at my mother's charity gala, she did something that made me decide to erase myself from this family permanently. Picture this. The Crystal Ballroom at the Four Seasons, 250 guests in couture and custom tailoring, champagne fountains flowing like water. My mother stood at the podium, diamond earrings catching the spotlight, introducing her family one by one. When she got to me, she smiled that smile I'd seen 1,000 times, the one that looked warm to everyone else but cut like a scalpel. "And this is my daughter Sloane," she said. "No ambition, no direction, just living off her trust fund and calling it a career." 250 people laughed. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just smiled, raised my champagne glass and said, "Cheers. This is the last time any of you will see me." Then I walked out. The room went completely silent. What happened next? That's what I'm here to tell you. Before I continue, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to know how this story ends. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. This is Playback Chapters, and we're just getting started. Now, let me take you back 14 years to the day I was forced to leave graduate school. The Brennan family of Greenwich, Connecticut. That's how we were known. Old money, respectable, philanthropic. My mother, Victoria Brennan, sat on the boards of 3 museums and a hospital foundation. My father, before he died when I was 12, had been a venture capitalist whose early bets on biotech made the family fortune. We had an 8-bedroom estate on 4 acres, a collection of cars that rotated seasonally, and a name that opened doors before we even knocked. From the outside, we looked perfect. My father died of a heart attack during my 7th grade science fair. I was presenting a project on renewable energy when the principal pulled me aside. I remember the fluorescent lights in the hallway, the smell of floor wax, the way my mother's voice sounded on the phone, flat, efficient, already planning the funeral press release. I barely remember his face without photographs, but I remember his hands, broad and warm, always reaching for mine. 2 years after his death, my mother remarried. Arthur Pennington came with a son from his previous marriage, Preston, 4 years older than me. Within months, they weren't just part of our family. They were the family. I became furniture. Not in any dramatic way. You understand. No Cinderella-style abuse, just invisibility. Preston got the praise for his boarding school grades. Mine were ignored. Preston got the new BMW at 16. I got his hand-me-down Volvo with 80,000 miles. Preston was the future of the Brennan Foundation. I was also here. My mother never hit me, never screamed at me. She just looked through me like I was a window she was trying to see past. But there was one person who saw me. My grandmother, Eleanor Brennan, my father's mother. She'd call me every Sunday, ask about my classes, my friends, my dreams. She'd say things like, "You remind me of myself at your age, Sloane, underestimated, but I see you." She left me something when she died, something no one in the family knew about. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In this family, I learned to become invisible. What I didn't know then was that invisibility would become my greatest weapon. The day my future was decided for me, I was 20 years old. Junior year at Stanford, art history major, 3.9 GPA. I had applications submitted for a master's program in conservation science at the Courtauld Institute in London. My portfolio was strong. My recommendations were glowing. My interview was scheduled for March. My mother called me home on a Tuesday. "Family meeting," she said. Those 2 words had never meant anything good. I found her in the solarium. Floor-to-ceiling windows, imported marble, the smell of orchids that cost more than most people's rent. Arthur stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, supportive, united. "Sloane," my mother began, not looking up from her tablet. "We need to make some adjustments as a family." Preston had been accepted into Harvard Business School. Full-time, 2 years, the path to taking over the Brennan Foundation's investment portfolio. "We can't afford both your graduate program and his," she continued. "So we've decided you'll take a deferral, just for now. Preston's career will benefit the whole family." My heart rate didn't change. I already knew where this was going. "You said you'd support my education," I heard myself say. "You promised Dad before he died." My mother's jaw tightened. Circumstances change. When the foundation stabilizes, I'll make it up to you. She never did. What I found out later through a family accountant's slip of the tongue was that there was plenty of money. The Brennan Foundation had just cleared $2.3 million in quarterly returns. They just chose not to spend it on me. I didn't argue that day. I just nodded. But inside, I made a promise to myself. This was the last time I'd let anyone else decide my worth. I moved to New York with $3,400 in savings and a duffel bag of clothes that didn't fit the life I was leaving behind. My first apartment was a 300-square-foot studio above a bodega in Bushwick. The radiator clanked all night. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's television. I ate instant ramen for dinner and day-old pastries from the cafe where I worked mornings. But here's the thing about rock bottom. You can't fall any further. I got a job as a gallery assistant at a small Chelsea space. Entry-level, minimum wage, no benefits. The owner, a sharp woman named Rosa Alvarez, saw something in me that my family never had. "You've got an eye, Sloane," she told me one day. "Use it." So I did. I stayed late. I learned every system, every artist, every collector. I took free online courses at night, art authentication, conservation science, provenance research, NYU's open curriculum, where became my graduate school. I didn't call home, didn't ask for a single dollar. When my mother's assistant sent me a birthday card with a $100 check from the family, I tore it up and threw it away. 6 years after I left Greenwich, I had saved enough to start my own firm. Brennan Authentication Services, LLC, just me, a laptop, and a rented desk in a shared workspace. I kept my name off everything public. No LinkedIn profile, no press releases. All business went through the company name and my attorney. Why the secrecy? Because I knew my family. If they found out I was succeeding, they'd find a way to take credit or tear it down. Some people build empires to prove their worth. I built mine in silence because silence was the only language my family had ever taught me. My grandmother, Eleanor, died 3 years ago when I was 31. I flew to Connecticut for the funeral, sat in the back pew, watched my mother deliver a eulogy about a remarkable woman who dedicated her life to family. The irony was so thick I could taste it. At the reception, I kept to myself. No one seemed to notice I was there, which was exactly how I wanted it. But 3 days later, I got a call from a lawyer I'd never heard of. Margaret Chen from a Manhattan firm specializing in estate planning. "Miss Brennan," she said, "I represent your grandmother's separate estate. She established a trust in your name 11 years ago with explicit instructions that no other family member be informed of its existence." I nearly dropped my phone. The trust contained $1.2 million. "She left a letter for you as well," Margaret continued. "Would you like me to read it?" I said yes, though my voice didn't sound like my own. "My dearest Sloane," Margaret read, "I know what they did to you. I know about the deferral, the promises, all of it. I argued with your mother until I had no words left. She wouldn't listen. She never does. This money is yours. No strings, no conditions. Use it to build the life you deserve, the life they tried to take from you. Remember what I always told you. Don't let anyone say you're not worthy. When they finally see your worth, it will be too late for them. I believe in you. I always have. All my love, Grandma Eleanor." I used part of that money to expand Brennan Authentication. The rest I kept as insurance for a day I hoped would never come, but always knew might. That day came 4 weeks ago. Let me tell you about Brennan Authentication today. 22 employees, $6.8 million in annual revenue. Offices in Tribeca, Manhattan. The kind of address that makes people take you seriously before you even open your mouth. I wear Cartier now, not because I need to impress anyone, but because I earned every piece myself. We specialize in fine art authentication and provenance research, helping collectors, museums, and auction houses verify the history and legitimacy of artworks. It's not glamorous work, but it's profitable, and I'm good at it. Here's the part that would make you laugh if it weren't so painfully ironic. One of our biggest clients is the Brennan Foundation, my mother's charitable organization. They signed a 5-year consulting contract with us 4 years ago. We handle authentication for their entire collection, provenance research for acquisitions, conservation assessments, and exhibition planning. The contract is worth about 35% of their annual programming budget in direct value and donor confidence. My mother has no idea. All communications go through my team. All contracts are signed by my CFO, James Okonkwo. The few times Victoria Brennan has praised Brennan Authentication at foundation events, she's been praising her own daughter's work. The daughter, she told everyone, was worthless. 4 weeks ago, I received a formal invitation to the Brennan Foundation's annual charity gala, gold-embossed lettering. Victoria Brennan requests the pleasure of your company. I almost threw it away. Almost. But then I thought about Grandma Aliner, about 14 years of silence, about every promise broken and every door closed in my face. I RSVP'd yes. Not because I wanted reconciliation, not because I hoped things had changed. I went because I knew with absolute certainty that my mother would do something unforgivable, and when she did, I wanted to be there to say goodbye on my own terms. I just didn't know how right I would be. The crystal ballroom hasn't changed in 20 years. Same crystal chandeliers, same pretentious valet service, same crowd of old money and new ambition pretending they belong together. I wore a black St. Laurent gown, simple, elegant, expensive. My grandmother's pearl earrings, a Cartier watch, a vintage Birkin I'd bought at auction myself. Everything I owned I'd bought myself. That mattered to me more than the labels. Arthur intercepted me at the entrance. He'd aged, but his smile hadn't. Still that perfect mask of warmth that hid something colder underneath. His tuxedo was brioni. His cufflinks were large. His eyes did a quick inventory of my outfit before he spoke. "Sloane, you came." His tone suggested this was a pleasant surprise and a minor inconvenience. "Your mother wasn't sure you'd have something appropriate to wear." I smiled. How thoughtful of her to worry. Inside, 250 guests mingled beneath crystal light. The who's who of Connecticut philanthropy, museum directors, auction house executives, collectors, politicians. I recognized some faces from my mother's old dinner parties. None of them recognized me. Preston swept past with a willowy redhead on his arm, not even glancing my direction. He was telling someone about his vision for the foundation's expansion. Classic Preston, all confidence, no substance. I found my seat assignment. Table 17, the far corner near the kitchen entrance with friends of the family I'd never met. Not the family table, not even close. I wasn't surprised, but I noted it. A waiter offered champagne. Krug Close Dambonnet, nothing but the best for Victoria Brennan's big night. I took a glass. Across the room, I caught my mother's eye. She nodded once, a dismissal disguised as acknowledgement, then turned back to her real guests. The evening was just beginning, and I had a front row seat to my own family's contempt. I've learned over the years that the best information comes from staying quiet and keeping your ears open. From my corner table, I watched and listened. The acoustics in that ballroom carried conversations better than people realized. My mother was holding court near the bar, surrounded by foundation donors. I heard her mention strategic acquisitions and collection development, standard philanthropic speak. But then, Brennan Authentication has been transformative for our collection, she was saying to a silver-haired man I recognized as a major Met trustee. They're the backbone of our provenance work. Whoever runs that firm is a genius. The other man nodded. I've been trying to get them to consult on our Asian acquisitions for months. Very private operation. Do you know who's behind it? My mother shrugged. Never met them personally. Everything goes through their legal team and account managers. But honestly, I don't care who they are as long as they keep delivering results. I took a sip of champagne to hide my smile. My phone buzzed. A text from James, my CFO. Contract renewal docs from Brennan Foundation arrived today. They want another 5 years. Waiting on your decision. I typed back, I'll have an answer by end of week. What my mother didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that Brennan Authentication's contract with the Brennan Foundation was coming up for renewal. If we walked away, they'd lose 35% of their collection credibility overnight. In the art world, provenance is everything. Without authenticated provenance, donors question acquisitions. Insurance becomes problematic. Loans to major exhibitions dry up. I hadn't decided what to do yet. Part of me wanted to keep the professional relationship separate from the personal toxicity. But as I watched my mother bask in praise for her foundation's success built partly on my work, I felt something shift. Tonight would determine everything. I needed a refill on my champagne. Or maybe I just needed to move, to shake off the strange energy building in my chest. At the bar, I ran into the extended family firing squad. Aunt Patricia, Arthur's younger sister, spotted me first. Her face did that thing where surprise becomes pity becomes condescension in about half a second. "Sloane, oh my goodness, I almost didn't recognize you." She looked me up and down. "You look, well, still up in New York doing whatever it is you do." "Art authentication," I said. "Fine art provenance research." "Oh, how nice." The way she said it made it sound like I'd told her I collected bottle caps. "Are you seeing anyone? Your mother mentioned you're still single. 34, right? Time flies." Before I could respond, Uncle David joined in. "Victoria was just telling me you're still figuring things out. Nothing wrong with being a late bloomer, I suppose. Not everyone is meant for traditional success." I realized with cold clarity what had happened. My mother had briefed them, given them talking points about the family disappointment, set the narrative before I even arrived. "Victoria said you had some emotional difficulties after leaving Stanford," Aunt Patricia continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Burnout, wasn't it? So brave of you to come tonight despite everything." I felt my grip tighten on my champagne glass. Not from hurt, I was long past that. From the sheer audacity. "I appreciate the concern," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But I'm doing very well, actually, better than I've ever been." They exchanged glances, the kind that says, "Poor thing doesn't even know how far she's fallen." I excused myself before I said something I'd regret. But a plan was forming in my mind. Cold, clear, inevitable. Preston found me on the terrace, looking out at the city lights. The October air was cool, and the skyline glittered like scattered diamonds. "Well, well," his voice came from behind me, heavy with contempt. "The prodigal daughter." I didn't turn around. "Preston." He stepped beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Creed Aventus, probably a gift from our mother. "Dad's about to give her speech. Wanted to make sure you weren't planning any dramatic scenes." "Why would I do that?" "Because you've always been jealous." He said it like it was established fact. "The way you stormed off after the deferral, the way you disappeared to New York like some wounded animal, you've never gotten over it." Now I turned, looked at my stepbrother in his $6,000 tuxedo, his Patek Philippe, his perfectly styled hair. "Is that what you tell yourself?" His eyes hardened. "I heard you started some kind of little business up there, playing art expert." He laughed, short and cruel. "How long until it fails? 6 months? A year? Then you'll come crawling back, begging Mom for help." "I won't." "You will. You always do. You're weak, Sloane. You always have been." I could have told him then about Brennan Authentication, about the contract, about how his precious foundation's credibility was built on the work of the sister he dismissed. But I didn't. Because some revelations need the right stage. "You know what, Preston? You can believe whatever makes you feel better." I started to walk past him. "But I promise you this. After tonight, you're going to wish you'd treated me differently." His laugh followed me inside. Dismissive, arrogant. He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The ballroom lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. My mother climbed the steps to thunderous applause. The conquering hero of Connecticut philanthropy, taking her annual bow. "Thank you," she said. her voice carrying that practiced warmth she'd perfected over decades. 40 years of collecting, of preserving, of building something that matters. Laughter, more applause. She began her speech thanking donors, curators, mentors, thanking fate, taking credit for everything. Then came the family segment. I couldn't have done any of this without my incredible husband, Arthur. She gestured to his table. 30 years of putting up with my late nights and collection trips. You're a saint. More applause. Arthur dabbed at his eyes perfectly on cue. And my son Preston, who will be taking over as Director of Acquisitions come January. Victoria beamed with pride. The future of the Brennan Foundation. I couldn't be prouder. Standing ovation. Preston rose, waved. The picture of cultural royalty. Then my mother's eyes found me. And something shifted in her expression. Something mean. And of course, my daughter Sloane. The spotlight swung to my table. I felt 250 pairs of eyes turn toward me. No ambition, no real career, just lives off her trust fund and calls it a career. She paused for comedic effect. But hey, at least she showed up tonight. Maybe someday she'll find a wealthy collector to take care of her. The room erupted in laughter. Real laughter. The kind that comes from people who think they're in on a joke, not realizing they're watching cruelty dressed up as comedy. I sat perfectly still. Didn't flinch. Didn't cry. Didn't look away. I just waited for the laughter to fade. And then I stood up. The room went quiet as I rose. I could feel every eye on me. Some curious, some pitying, some already preparing to witness a breakdown. The unstable daughter, finally cracking under her mother's harmless joke. I picked up my champagne glass slowly, deliberately. My mother's smile faltered just slightly. She hadn't expected me to react. I never did. I was supposed to sit there and take it like I always had. I raised the glass toward her. Congratulations on another successful gala, Mother. My voice was clear, steady, loud enough for every microphone in the room to pick up. 40 years of collecting, quite an achievement. I paused. You taught me a lot about hard work, about sacrifice, about exactly what kind of loyalty family can expect from you. The silence was absolute now. I could hear someone's ice clinking in their glass 3 tables away. So here's to you. I lifted my champagne higher. Cheers. This is the last time any of you will see me. I set the glass down without drinking. Then I picked up my Birkin bag, turned, and walked toward the exit. My Louboutin heels clicked against the hardwood floor, the only sound in that cavernous room. I didn't run, didn't hurry, just walked. Spine straight, head high. Behind me, silence. Complete, total, devastating silence. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered something I couldn't hear. But mostly, there was just the echo of my footsteps and 250 people trying to process what they'd just witnessed. The daughter who was supposed to be broken had just walked out on her own terms. I pushed through the double doors and stepped into the night. And for the first time in 14 years, I could breathe. I was almost to my car, a Tesla Model S, midnight blue, custom plate reading PROVNCE1, when I heard footsteps behind me. Sloane, stop right there. Arthur's voice, shrill and furious. I kept walking. What do you think you're doing? He grabbed my arm, spinning me around. His face was red beneath the ballroom lights. His careful composure cracked. Do you have any idea what you just did? You humiliated your mother in front of everyone. I looked at his hand on my arm until he removed it. I humiliated her. I asked quietly, I think you have that backwards. My mother appeared behind him, her face a thundercloud. 250 guests were probably watching from the windows. She was aware of that. I could see her calculating. Get back inside, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Apologize now. No. The word hung in the air between us. This isn't a negotiation, Sloane. I'm your mother, I'm telling you. You're telling me what? I cut her off. Something I'd never done in my life. That I should go back in there and let you keep using me as your punchline. That I should smile while you tell 250 people I'm worthless. It was a joke. It was the truth of how you see me, and I'm done pretending otherwise. I opened my car door. My mother stepped forward. If you leave now, you're done. Do you understand me? No more family, no more support, nothing. I almost laughed. Mother, you cut me off at 20 years old. What support? I slid into the driver's seat. Tonight, I'm saying it for both of us. I started the engine. Goodbye. And I drove away. I pulled into a parking garage 3 blocks away and sat in my car, engine idling, hands still on the wheel. For a long moment, I just breathed. Okay, let me step out of the story for a second and talk to you directly. I know some of you watching this have been through something similar. Maybe not a charity gala, maybe not 250 witnesses, but that feeling of being the family disappointment, the one they talk about in whispers, the one whose success they refuse to see. I know you understand. If you've ever sat at a family gathering while someone made you the punchline, if you've ever smiled through pain because making a scene would only prove them right, if you've ever loved people who made you feel invisible, this story is for you. So here's what I'm asking. If any of this is resonating with you, drop a comment, tell me your story, or just let me know you're here. Because honestly, knowing I'm not alone in this, that means more than you can imagine. And if you want to know what happened next, and trust me, the next part is where everything changes. Make sure you're subscribed to Playback Chapters, hit that bell, because what my mother discovered in the weeks after that gala, well, let's just say she learned exactly how wrong she was about me. Now back to the story. The morning after the gala, I woke up in my Tribeca apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. But I knew it wasn't over. Families like mine don't let go that easily. They would try to control the narrative, spin the story, make me the villain. What they didn't know was that I had something they couldn't spin their way out of. Let me tell you about the week that followed. It started with text messages. Not from my mother. She was too proud for that. But from cousins, aunts, family friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly very concerned about my mental state. Sloane, I heard about the gala. Your mother says you're struggling. Do you need help? Patricia told me you had some kind of breakdown. We're all worried about you, sweetie. Your mother loves you. She just wants what's best. Maybe you should apologize and come home. The narrative was already being written. Poor Sloane, unstable, jealous, had some kind of episode at the gala. Victoria Brennan, patient, loving mother doing her best with a troubled daughter. I didn't respond to any of them. Then came the more interesting call. My phone rang on Tuesday afternoon. A Connecticut number I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. Miss Brennan, this is Thomas Reed. I'm counsel for the Brennan Foundation. The voice was polished, professional. I'm calling on behalf of Victoria. She'd like to discuss mending fences. Really? Between you and me, there's been some concerning chatter about your connection to certain business partners. Rumors, probably nothing, but Victoria thought it would be good to clear the air. I went cold. Rumors, business partners. They were fishing. What kind of rumors? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Oh, something about our consulting partners at Brennan Authentication. Someone thought they had seen you at their offices once. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. My mind raced. How? Who had seen me? When? I'm not sure what you're referring to, I said. But please tell my mother I have nothing to discuss with her. I hung up. They were getting close. Closer than I'd realized. It was time to stop waiting and start acting. While I was fielding concerned texts in New York, my mother was facing a different kind of crisis in Connecticut. I learned later, much later, what happened in that boardroom. Victoria, Brennan, had walked into what should have been a routine quarterly meeting. Instead, her chief curator looked like she'd seen a ghost. "We have a problem with Brennan Authentication," the curator said, sliding a folder across the mahogany table. "Their contract is up for renewal in 6 months. They haven't responded to our extension offer." Victoria frowned. "So send another offer. Increase the terms if you have to." "We've tried 3 times. Their legal team just says under review." "Then call their executives directly." "We've tried that too." The curator shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, Brennan Authentication is extremely private. No one meets with their leadership. Everything goes through intermediaries." Victoria's frown deepened. "We've been working with them for 4 years. Someone must have met with them." "No, ma'am. It's all been virtual meetings, legal representatives, account managers. No one at this foundation has ever met the actual ownership." A long silence. "If they walk away from us," the curator continued, "we lose 35% of our collection credibility overnight. It would take at least 2 years to find a replacement, and that's optimistic. In this market." "I know what it means," Victoria snapped. She stared at the folder. Something was nagging at her. The timing, the silence, the fact that this was happening right after. "Find out who owns that company," she said. "I don't care what it takes. I want a name by end of week." What Victoria didn't know, what she was about to discover, was that the name she was looking for was already on her family tree. Thursday evening, my phone rang. "Arthur." I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Sloane, sweetheart." His voice was honey and sugar. "The performance of a lifetime. I've been so worried about you." "Have you?" "Of course, your family. That's what family does." He laughed softly, as if we were sharing a private joke. "Listen, about the gala, your mother feels terrible. She didn't mean what she said. You know how she is. She exaggerates when she's anxious. She said I had no ambition and no worth in front of 250 people. She was nervous, trying to be funny. Does she want to apologize?" A slight hesitation. "She wants to move forward. That's what matters, isn't it? So no apology." "Sloane, don't be difficult. We're trying to help you." "Help me, now." I laughed. "Arthur, you've spent 30 years making sure I knew I wasn't really part of this family. Now you're calling to help me. Why?" Another pause. Longer this time. "I think we both know there's more going on here than just family drama," he said, his voice dropping its warmth. "Whatever you're planning, and I know you're planning something, it would be better for everyone if you just came home and talked this through." "No." I hung up before he could respond. They knew something. They just didn't know how much to be afraid of yet. The next morning, I drove to Margaret Chen's office in Midtown. Elinor had been my grandmother's lawyer, and since the trust fund had become mine, her office was sleek and efficient. Glass and steel, Manhattan skyline views, the kind of place where serious business happened. "I've been expecting you," she said when I walked in. "I assume this is about the Brennan Foundation." "They're investigating Brennan Authentication, trying to find out who owns it." Margaret nodded, unsurprised. "Your anonymity was always going to be temporary. The question is, how do you want this to unfold?" She spread documents across her desk. The Brennan Authentication, contract with the Brennan Foundation. Every clause, every renewal term, every exit provision. The trust fund documents. The corporate papers. "Your contract includes a standard 30-day termination notice," Margaret said, pointing to the relevant section. "You can end the agreement for any reason. No penalties, no legal exposure." And my grandmother's trust. Completely separate from the Brennan family estate, legally unimpeachable. Victoria has no claim to any of it, even if she tried to contest. She looked at me over her glasses. Elinor made sure of that. I stared at the papers. Everything was in order. Everything was legal. Every T crossed, every I dotted. What did my grandmother say about all this when she set up the trust? Margaret smiled sadly. She said, "One day, Sloane is going to need leverage, and when that day comes, I want her to have it." I felt tears prick at my eyes. Grandma Alina, protecting me even from the grave. She also said something else, Margaret added. "Tell her not to be cruel about it, just be honest. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough." I nodded. The truth it was. That afternoon, I sat down with James Okonkwo, my CFO, in Brennan Authentication's conference room. James had been with me since year 3. He knew everything about my family, about the Brennan Foundation, about why I'd kept my name off the paperwork. He was loyal, competent, and the closest thing I had to a true ally. "They want to renew the contract," he said, scrolling through his tablet. 5 more years, actually increase the terms by 15%. They're nervous. They should be. I pulled up the financial projections on the conference room screen. Numbers don't lie. And these numbers told a devastating story. If we walk away, the Brennan Foundation loses 35% of their collection credibility within 60 days. In the art world, that's not a dip. That's a free fall. Donors question acquisitions. Insurance becomes problematic. Major exhibition loans dry up. James nodded. Preston just took over as director of acquisitions. If this hits on his watch, his reputation is finished before he starts. We sat with that for a moment. It felt surreal, holding so much power over people who had spent decades making me feel powerless. "What do you want to do?" James asked. I'd been thinking about this for days. About Grandma Alina's words. About revenge versus truth. About what kind of person I wanted to be. "Draft the termination letter," I said finally. 30-day notice per the contract terms. No malice, no accusations, just business. I paused. And the reason? Strategic repositioning. That's all they need to know officially. I paused again. But I'm also going to write a personal letter to my mother. Separate envelope. She deserves to know exactly who she's been depending on and exactly why that's ending. James nodded. "When do you want to send it?" "Monday, first thing, no more waiting, no more hiding." I spent all of Sunday writing that letter. Not the official termination notice. James handled that, the professional language, the legal provisions, the clinical restructuring of client portfolio explanation that would go in the file. I wrote the personal letter. The truth. I went through 9 drafts. The first was too angry. Pages of accusations, every hurt cataloged and condemned. The second was too cold. The third was too desperate. The final version was simple, clean, factual. "Dear Mother, you said I had no ambition. You told 250 people I was worthless. I want you to know something. The company you called the backbone of the Brennan Foundation, Brennan Authentication, is mine. I built it. I own it. For 4 years, the daughter you dismissed has been a cornerstone of your collection's credibility. I'm ending our contract not as revenge, as a boundary. Grandma Alina left me a trust fund you never knew about. She saw what you couldn't, that I was worth investing in. Everything I have, I built myself, with her faith, without your support. I don't need you to apologize. I don't need you to understand. I just need you to know that I am not what you said I was. I never was. Don't contact me again. Sloane Brennan." I included my middle name deliberately. The name I'd added 5 years ago in honor of the only person in my family who'd believed in me. I also included a photocopy of the Brennan Authentication Incorporation papers. My name is sole owner, clearly visible. I read the letter 3 times. Checked for typos. Checked for excessive emotion. Found none. Just the truth. Sometimes, I think that's the most devastating weapon of all. Monday, 9:00 a.m. Courier confirmation. The package had arrived at Brennan Foundation headquarters. Someone named Patricia Chen had signed for it. I remembered her from childhood. I sat in my office watching my phone, waiting. 10:15 a.m. missed call from Victoria Brennan. 10:17 a.m. missed call from Victoria Brennan. 10:23 a.m. missed call from Preston Brennan. 10:31 a.m. missed call from Arthur Pennington. 10:45 a.m. missed call from Victoria Brennan. 11:02 text message from Victoria. Call me now. 11:15 a.m. text message from Preston. What the hell is this? Call us. 11:34 text message from Arthur. Sloane, this is not funny. Pick up your phone. By noon, I had 14 missed calls, 9 text messages, and 3 voicemails I didn't bother listening to. I didn't respond to any of them. I had waited 14 years for this moment. They could wait a few more hours. At 2:00 p.m., my assistant knocked on my door. Miss Brennan, there's a family who says they need to see you immediately. They're in the lobby. So, they'd driven to New York. 2 hours of traffic and panic just to confront me in person. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the window, straightened my blazer. Send them to conference room B, I said. I'll be there in 5 minutes. This was it. The conversation I'd imagined 1,000 times. The confrontation I'd prepared for without knowing when it would come. I thought of Grandma Alina, of her letter, of her faith in me. Don't be cruel, she'd said. Just be honest. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and walked toward the conference room. Time to be honest. Conference room B had glass walls. I'd chosen it deliberately. My 22 employees could see inside, though they couldn't hear. Witnesses, not to humiliate anyone, but to ensure the meeting stayed civil. Victoria, Arthur, and Preston stood clustered near the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. They'd never expected to see it from this perspective. From my domain. My territory. My mother turned when I entered. Her face was gray, older than I'd ever seen her look. Sloane. Her voice cracked on my name. What is this? Hello, Mother, Arthur, Preston. I took a seat at the head of the conference table. Calm, professional. I assume you received my letter. Your letter? Preston stepped forward, jabbing his finger toward me. You can't just. This isn't. Sit down, Preston. My voice was quiet but firm. I won't discuss anything with you yelling across the room. He looked at my mother, uncertain. Victoria nodded sharply. They sat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, my mother leaned forward. This is all some kind of misunderstanding. What part? Brennan Authentication. You can't possibly. A company like that. I finished for her. I didn't. I did. I slid a folder across the table. Company registration. Tax filings. Client list. 4 years ago, your foundation signed a contract with mine. You've praised my work at donor events. You've called us transformative. You just didn't know you were praising me. Victoria's face had gone pale. But you don't have a degree. You were just a what? I asked quietly. A disappointment, a failure. I shook my head. I was a 20-year-old who was told to sacrifice her future. I built something anyway. Silence. My mother stared at the documents like they might burst into flames if she looked hard enough. Okay. Victoria's voice was strained, the mask of philanthropic composure cracking. I apologize about the gala. Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry. Now can we talk about the contract? You're sorry because you need something from me. That's not an apology. For God's sake, Sloane. Preston slammed his palm on the table. Do you know what happens if you pull this contract? 20% of our programming staff gone. Because of your petty revenge. It's not revenge. It's a business decision. He was standing now, veins in his neck visible. You've been planning this for years, waiting to destroy us. I planned nothing. I kept my voice level. I built a company. Your foundation chose to become dependent on mine. That's not my fault. You could have told us, Arthur interjected, his voice high and strained. You could have said something. When? When you told me I didn't need graduate school because I'd find a husband. When you spread rumors that I had burnout. She had no answer. I turned to my mother. You want to know the worst part, Mother? I would have kept the contract going. I wasn't planning any of this. But then you stood in front of 250 people and told them I was worthless, that I had no ambition. I paused. You chose this, not me. Victoria's jaw worked. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something like recognition in her eyes. Like she finally understood what she'd done. Then it was gone. What do you want? She asked flatly. Nothing you can give me. There must be something. You're not listening. I don't want anything from you. I never did. I just want you to know the truth. Fine. Victoria's voice went cold. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by the steel I'd known my whole life. If that's how you want to play this, you walk away from this family. You're done. No inheritance, nothing. I almost laughed. Mother, you cut me off at 20 years old. What inheritance? I could make things very difficult for you. I have connections, lawyers. On what grounds? I leaned forward. Every document is legal. Every contract was signed in good faith. There's nothing here you can sue me for, and we both know it. She glared at me. Don't be so sure. Actually, I am sure. I pulled out a photocopy of the trust document. Because my lawyer, who is also Grandma Aliner's lawyer, has already reviewed every possible angle. I let that sink in. You remember Margaret Chen. Aliner used her specifically because she knew you'd try something like this someday. Arthur gasped. Aliner knew about all of this. She left me a trust fund, $1.2 million, specifically structured so you couldn't touch it. I pulled out the trust document. She knew exactly what kind of family she married into. That's why she protected me from it. Victoria's face went from red to white. She had no right. She had every right. It was her money. I stood. This meeting is over. Sloane, we're done. I've said everything I came to say. I walked toward the door, then paused. One more thing. If you contact me again, calls, texts, showing up at my office, I will release every email, every document, every record of how this family has treated me. All of it is legal. All of it is backed up. And all of it would make a very interesting story for the art press. I opened the door. The receptionist will show you out. I stood in the doorway, watching them gather themselves. 3 people who had spent my entire life making me feel small, now looking very small themselves. My mother rose slowly, like an old woman suddenly aware of her age. Arthur clutched his briefcase like a shield. Preston stared at me with something new in his eyes. Not contempt anymore, but fear. This isn't over, Preston said. Yes, it is. I meant it, every word. I spent 14 years building a life you tried to convince me I couldn't have. I did it without your help, without your approval, without your permission. And I'll continue to do it without any of you in my life. Arthur's lower lip trembled. The performance of fatherly concern. Sloane, please, we're family. We share a last name, Arthur. That's all we share. I held the door open wider. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm not asking for reconciliation. I'm setting a boundary. Don't contact me again. Don't mention me to your friends, your colleagues, anyone. Just let me go. Victoria stopped in front of me. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Mother and daughter. Strangers who happened to share a last name. You really hate us that much? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. No, Mother. I met her eyes steadily. I don't hate you. That's what you don't understand. I just don't need you anymore. And that's something you'll have to learn to live with. She had no response to that. They walked out through the lobby, past my employees who carefully pretended not to watch. The glass doors closed behind them. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and got back to work. Okay, let me pause here again. If you're still watching, first of all, thank you. This isn't easy to tell, and knowing you're listening means more than you know. If you think this is where the story ends, it's not. The fallout from that meeting rippled out further than I expected. When I sent that termination letter, I thought I was just setting a boundary, protecting my peace, walking away from people who had hurt me. I didn't anticipate what would happen to the Brennan Foundation, or to my mother's reputation, or to the family secrets that would come spilling out once people started talking. Here's my ask. If this story has moved you, if it's made you think about your own family, your own boundaries, your own worth, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And subscribe to Playback Chapters if you haven't already. Turn on notifications because the ending of this story, it's complicated. It's messy. And it taught me something about revenge that I didn't expect. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to walk away from family? Did it feel like freedom or like grief, or maybe both? I've read every comment on my previous stories, and they've helped me feel less alone in this. So please share your thoughts. Now back to the story. 1 week after that confrontation in my office, I received a phone call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Someone who had information that changed everything I thought I knew about my family, and about why they really treated me the way they did. Let me tell you about that call. The caller was my Uncle Robert, my father's younger brother. Robert had always been the black sheep of the Brennan family, an artist, a dreamer, the one who didn't go into business or philanthropy. I hadn't seen him since my father's funeral. Hadn't spoken to him in over 2 decades. Sloane, his voice was older, rougher. I heard what happened at the gala, at Victoria's office. Word travels fast. Small community. He paused. Listen, there's something you should know. Something I should have told you years ago, but I was too much of a coward. I sat down slowly. I'm listening. When your mother said the family couldn't afford both your graduate program and Preston's, that was a lie. I know, I figured that out. No, you don't understand. It wasn't just that there was money available. There was a specific fund. Your father set it up before he died, for your education, enough to cover a full graduate program anywhere in the world. My heart stopped. Your mother drained it, used it for Preston's business school, then told you there was no money. Robert's voice cracked. Your father wanted you to have choices, Sloane. Victoria stole them. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of my desk. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid of Victoria. We all were. Robert exhaled. Alina, your grandmother, she found out. That's why she set up the trust for you. She couldn't get your father's money back, but she could make sure Victoria didn't take anything else. I thought about Grandma Alina's letter. I know what they did to you. She knew all along. Why are you telling me now? Because it's time the truth came out. All of it. He wasn't done. 2 months after I terminated the Brennan Authentication contract, the consequences became public. I wasn't trying to monitor what happened to the Brennan Foundation. Honestly, I was trying to move on. But in the Connecticut philanthropy community, news travels fast. Especially bad news. The foundation announced a 25% programming reduction. 3 exhibitions canceled. 2 major donors withdrew their pledges. The press release blamed market conditions and strategic restructuring, but everyone knew the real story. Their most trusted authentication partner had walked away, and they couldn't recover. Preston, barely 4 months into his role as director of acquisitions, was already being questioned by the board. His vision for the future was crumbling under the weight of his mother's bridge burning. Victoria came out of semi-retirement to help manage the crisis. The triumphant legacy she'd built, the reputation she'd cultivated, was unraveling. But the real damage was to her reputation. Word spread. Not from me. I kept my mouth shut. But 250 people had watched my mother humiliate her daughter at that gala. And when those same people heard that the daughter was actually her foundation's most important professional partner, the whispers started. Did you hear about Victoria Brennan? Mocked her own daughter. Turns out she was keeping her foundation credible. Always thought there was something off about that family. In Connecticut philanthropy circles, reputation is everything. And Victoria's was crumbling. A former colleague told me that at a recent museum benefit, Victoria sat alone. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who'd publicly disowned the daughter who'd secretly been her foundation's backbone. I didn't feel triumphant hearing this. I didn't feel satisfied. I just felt tired. Grandma Leaner had been right. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough. I didn't have to do anything else. The truth did it all by itself. 8 months later, I sat in a therapist's office in the West Village. Not because I was falling apart. Because I was finally ready to put myself back together. You don't seem like someone who needs therapy, Dr. Patel said during our first session. Everyone needs therapy, I replied. I'm just finally letting myself admit it. We talked about my family, about the years of invisibility, about the burden of building success in silence, about the strange grief of cutting ties with people who were supposed to love me. Do you regret what you did? She asked. No. And I meant it. I regret that it had to happen, but I don't regret protecting myself. Outside of therapy, my life was good. Better than good. Brennan Authentication was thriving. We'd replaced the Brennan Foundation contract with 4 smaller clients, more diversified, more stable. James got a promotion. I hired 6 new employees. We moved to a bigger office with views of the Hudson. I reconnected with Uncle Robert. We had dinner once a month. He told me stories about my father, the real ones, not the sanitized versions my mother had fed me. He'd been fierce, apparently, stubborn, a fighter. You're just like him, Robert said. He'd be so proud of you. I still keep the photo of Grandma Leaner on my desk. I visit her grave every month, leave flowers, tell her about my life. It feels strange talking to a headstone, but also healing. I did it, Grandma, I told her one spring morning. I didn't let them define me. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. If I listened closely, I could almost hear her voice. I knew you would, sweetheart, I always knew. So here's what I learned. If you want the moral of this story, your worth is not determined by a degree. It's not determined by your family's opinion. It's not determined by who believes in you or who tries to tear you down. Your worth is determined by what you build when no one is watching, by who you become when everyone counts you out, by the life you create with your own 2 hands. My mother thought she was teaching me a lesson at that gala. She thought she was putting me in my place. What she actually did was set me free. I don't hate my family. That's the part people struggle to understand. Hate takes energy. Hate is a chain. I'd rather spend that energy on people who deserve it. On work I believe in. On relationships that nourish me. On a life that's truly mine. Boundaries aren't about revenge. They're about protection. They're about saying, this is where my life begins and your damage ends. If you're in a family that makes you feel small, if you have people in your life who see your potential as a threat instead of a gift, if you've ever been the family disappointment, the scapegoat, the invisible one, I see you. I've been you. And I promise you There is life on the other side of walking away. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to Playback Chapters, hit the notification bell, check the description for more stories like this one, and remember, you are not what they said you were. You never were. You are so much more. Until next time, this is Sloane, and I'm finally free.